It all happened one fateful night when me and my buddies, a bunch of teenagers, decided to explore a place that had the whole town talking, a haunted house. Now, don't get me wrong, we ain't into all the ghostly stuff or any of that nonsense. We're just a bunch of kids looking for some excitement, and we figured this creepy old house would do the trick. It was a moonless night, dark as sin, and the air had that eerie chill that made your skin crawl. We had our flashlights ready, and I tell you, they didn't do much to dispel the darkness that surrounded us. As we crept through the house, creaky floors and the wind howling through the broken windows set the stage for what would soon become a nightmare. We heard whispers, not ghostly whispers, mind you, but hushed voices in the distance. Our nerves were already on edge. We pressed on. We should have known better, but we didn't. That's when we saw him, or at least I think it was a him, a tall figure in ragged clothes, clutching a chainsaw. Our hearts pounded like war drums as we bolted for the exit. The guy with the chainsaw gave chase, his mad laughter echoing in our ears. Adrenaline surged through us, and fear fueled our legs. We ran through the dark and tangled woods, branches clawing at us, and our breaths came in ragged gasps. We could hear the sirens in the distance as police closed in on the lunatic chasing us. But here's the part that'll send a chill down your spine. They never caught him. He vanished into the woods, leaving us terrified and confused. The terror of that night never left us, and it was a long time before any of us could sleep soundly. But as days turned to weeks, we couldn't help but wonder about the man with the chainsaw. What had possessed him to stalk a group of kids in a supposedly haunted house? It gnawed at our minds, and we couldn't let it go. We decided to do some digging, talking to folks who'd lived in the area for years. What we uncovered sent a chill down our spines deeper than that fateful night. Turns out the house had a dark history, far more sinister than any ghostly tales. Years ago, it had been the lair of a deranged serial killer. The twisted individual had terrorized the town, taking innocent lives and leaving a trail of blood in its wake. The police had been on his tail for ages, but he always managed to elude them, disappearing into the woods. Just like on that terrifying night, the locals had given him a name, the Chainsaw Man, and spoke of him in hushed tones. We couldn't believe what we were hearing. It seemed that our encounter with the maniac wasn't an isolated incident. He'd been lurking in that forsaken house for years, just waiting for someone foolish enough to wander in. It sent a chill down our spines, knowing that the man that we'd escaped from was the very same Chainsaw Man who'd haunted the town for decades. As we delved deeper into the grim history of the place, we found tales of other people who'd ventured into the house, never to return. Their disappearances were blamed on the supernatural, on ghostly apparitions and otherworldly entities, but the truth was far more horrifying. The Chainsaw Man had been lurking in the shadows, cutting short the lives of those who dared to trespass. But the story doesn't end there. We couldn't rest until we got to the bottom of this chilling mystery. We began to investigate the woods surrounding the haunted house, retracing our steps from that night, and there, hidden beneath the underbrush, we stumbled upon a makeshift campsite, complete with a crude shelter and scattered newspaper clippings detailing his grisly crimes. It was as though the Chainsaw Man had been living in those woods for years, right under everyone's noses. We didn't linger in the woods, fearing that he might return at any moment. We had enough evidence to make the townsfolk aware of the lurking evil, and they decided to launch an official manhunt for this deranged killer. But here's the most terrifying part. Despite all the efforts, all the searches and investigations, the Chainsaw Man was never found. He remained an elusive spectre, vanishing into the darkness as if he were part of the shadows themselves. To this day, the terror of that night and the realization that we came face to face with a true embodiment of evil still haunts us. We never dared to set foot near that cursed house again, and we pray that no one else will be lured into its clutches. So, if you hear of a haunted house in a quiet, desolate corner of town, heed my warning and stay far, far away. There are horrors lurking in the real world that are far more terrifying than any ghost story, and the Chainsaw Man is proof of that. A while back, me, Sarah, and a couple of my friends, Lisa and Emma, decided to visit this dilapidated abandoned mansion. We heard rumours that this place had a dark history, and we wanted to check it out for ourselves. As we entered, it was like stepping into a nightmare. The place was pitch black and the air was thick with a musty, unsettling smell. Broken furniture and peeling wallpaper added to the eerie atmosphere. We were on edge, but it was more like a real-life mystery adventure, We moved cautiously, using our phone flashlights to explore. Every creak and shadow played tricks on our minds. Suddenly we heard footsteps from upstairs. Our hearts pounded like crazy as we slowly made our way up, fear gnawing at us. And there, in the dim light of our phones, we saw a man, dishevelled and wide-eyed. He was clutching a machete, and a sinister grin spread across his face. Our screams pierced the air, and we turned and bolted, panic set in as we raced downstairs. We didn't know what this guy's deal was, but we weren't sticking around to find out. We reached the front door, but it was locked. We were trapped. Fear gripped us, and we pounded on the door, desperately screaming for help. And that's when the situation took an even darker turn. The crazed man caught up to us, machete gleaming menacingly, and we knew we had to fight back. Lisa grabbed a broken chair and swung it at him, making him stumble. It gave us just enough time to force open a window and escape into the backyard. As we ran, we heard sirens approaching. We called the police and help was on the way. The adrenaline pumping through us pushed us to keep running. It wasn't long before we heard shouting and a scuffle from inside the house. The police had arrived and a fierce confrontation unfolded. The attacker, still armed with the machete, put up a fight. It was like a scene from a horror movie, but it was all too real. We watched from the safety of the yard as the officers managed to subdue him, taking him into custody. Our hearts were still racing, but we were safe. The police told us this guy had been on the run, wanted for some terrible crimes. It sent shivers down our spines, realising how close we'd come to something truly horrifying. After our harrowing escape from the deranged attacker in that abandoned mansion, our lives were forever changed. We couldn't just let the story end there. We needed to know more about this man and the horrors he'd committed. The police took the attacker into custody and began a thorough investigation. We provided statements about our terrifying ordeal, and it turned out that this man had been on the run for weeks. He was wanted for multiple gruesome crimes, including assault, robbery, and worse. As the investigation unfolded, the story became even more chilling. It turned out the mansion was his hideout, a place where he committed many of his crimes. Inside they found evidence of his sinister activities, from weapons to stolen valuables. We couldn't believe that we'd stumbled into a real-life criminal's lair. The police pieced together a horrifying picture of his life. He'd been living in the abandoned mansion for months, lurking in the shadows, preying on unsuspecting victims. It sent shivers down our spines to think about how close we'd come to becoming his next victims. The attacker's background was just as disturbing. He had a history of violence and had evaded the law for far too long. We couldn't help but wonder if we had been his last intended victims before the law finally caught up with him. Our story, while terrifying and unforgettable, had a silver lining. It was a stark reminder that real-life horrors can be more chilling than any ghost story. We'd survived an ordeal that would haunt us for the rest of our lives, but we had also played a role in bringing a dangerous criminal to justice. To this day, we avoid places with dark histories, and we've become much more cautious in our explorations. Our experience in that abandoned mansion was a harsh lesson, one we hope others can learn from. Always stay safe, trust your instincts, and never underestimate the darkness that can exist in the real world. Prepare for a chilling journey into our third spine-tingling tale, but don't forget to summon your courage and subscribe right now if you crave more blood-curdling stories like this. We thought it would be a fun idea to explore this old rundown asylum one night. You know, the kind of place that's been abandoned for years and everyone in town has heard the spooky stories about it. It was a dark and foggy evening, which set the perfect mood for our adventure. We weren't ghost hunters or anything, just a group of buddies looking for some thrills. We packed our flashlights, some snacks, and headed to the place. thinking it was all just urban legends. As we entered the asylum, the air felt thick and the place was eerily silent. There were shattered windows, graffiti on the walls, and debris everywhere. It was creepy, but nothing out of the ordinary. We roamed through the dark hallways, sharing nervous laughs and trying to spook each other. But as we moved deeper into the building, things got really unsettling. We heard faint footsteps, whispers, and sometimes even the sound of doors creaking shut. We all froze, thinking it was one of us pranking the others, but no one confessed. Suddenly, we heard a loud, menacing laugh echoing through the corridors. That laugh was like nails on a chalkboard, sending shivers down our spines. We decided it was time to leave, but as we turned back, we saw a figure at the end of the hallway. It was a man, tall and menacing, dressed in tattered clothes. Panic set in, and we ran like our lives depended on it. The man chased us, yelling and screaming as we sprinted through the asylum. We could hear his heavy footsteps behind us, closing in with every passing second. The terror in our hearts pushed us to our limits. We finally reached the exit and scrambled out of the building, gasping for breath. We made it outside, but the man was right behind us, just a few steps away. It was like something out of a nightmare. Luckily, we managed to flag down a passing police car and they intervened. But here's the chilling part. As the police chased the crazed attacker, he vanished into the night. They searched the entire area, but he was gone without a trace. I can't explain what happened that night. It wasn't a ghost or a haunted house. It was a real living person who meant us harm. We were left speechless and terrified, and to this day, we can't forget those horrifying moments. So, my friends, be careful out there. Sometimes the scariest things are the ones that can't be easily explained, and the terror we felt that night will haunt us forever. Stay safe, and don't underestimate the darkness that can lurk in abandoned places. As the shadows of these haunted tales slowly fade, remember this: lurking in the darkness, there's something even more spine-chilling than the horrors you've witnessed. It's the bone-chilling void that would consume your existence if you dare to look away. Don't be a mere spectator. Become a fearless explorer of the unknown by subscribing and hitting that notification bell. Your life depends on it.